And so let's look at the RCB and what kind of job are they doing when it comes to checking on leaking wells and surface casing vents and all this sort of stuff. So, in 2009, their staff checked on the surface casing vent flow and gas migration on 5 fracking wells in this province. We've got nearly 350,000 wells, and they only checked 5. And their excuse was, limited compliance auditing was conducted in 2009 as staff focused on regulatory development so that they can frack you more without protecting you at all. One of the landowners down there owns land by this creek. We'd not seen seepages here before, and Canada showed up and shook the earth and continues to do so by fracturing the ground in order to stimulate production. Marvelous website, by the way, Journey of the Forsaken. Major investigation, this is what they concluded. Huge benzene levels, but they are declining slowly. Methane continues to discharge at reduced but constant rate. Long-term ecological effects are unknown. Jeff Time, who works for the oil and gas industry, by the way, did another study in a similar area, the Mam Creek area in Garfield County as well, looking at the growth of methane in water wells over time as a result of extreme fracking in the region. And this was a very well done study with isotopic analysis. And you can see Aspen is very close nearby. So what are the petroleum impacts? Well, elevated methane gas in water wells after a period of extreme fracking, produced water in the water wells, deeper, lower quality groundwater is moving upwards along the faults than the drill holes. And here you can just see the increasing rate of methane in groundwater. Average methane in water wells and surface ponds has increased each year as the number of gas wells drilled has increased. There's another marvelous in Canada landscape for you. Now we come to perhaps the most important study indicating that yes, you know what, when you frack the hell out of a formation, you're releasing a lot of methane. We don't know what the mechanism is, but we know that methane is getting into surface and groundwater as a consequence. So this was a study done at Duke University. It is peer-reviewed, unlike most of the work of the Energy Resources Conservation Board. And here it is. They looked at 68 water wells, and this is all in the Marcellus Shale region. Most of this was all in Pennsylvania. And this is what they found. They found methane in 51 out of 60 drinking water wells. And they found in many of those wells that methane was at dangerous levels. In other words, you could cause an explosion in your house by having this much methane coming out of your tap. And then here's the really interesting part, they found 17 times higher in wells near the active drilling area. They also found ethane, another marker of fracking, in 21 of 26 wells in the active drilling area. This was a stunning study. So what did the scientists have to say about this? Where is this methane coming from? Well, they said leaky well casings, that could be one. And they also said, they make reference again to the whole issue of nonlinear chaos, that the fracks could generate new fractures or enlarge existing ones above the formation. They don't know. They don't know what the mechanism is here. Here, with the well casing, it has to be properly sealed to prevent methane from coming up the well bore and leaking out. And so that might be an issue. And in fact, everyone in industry says this is an issue. They know it's an issue. It's a huge issue right across the board. The improper cementing of wells. Rob Renner, though, doesn't think any of this is an issue. When he was asked about this scientific report, here's the Petro State answering. It appears to me we're dealing with a different situation. Rob, what hell place are you living in? I don't know. While I think it's something the ERCB should take note of, I would tend to think the experience we have drilling in Alberta would preclude these kinds of results. That's our environment minister. He sounds like our energy minister. And so let's look at the ERCB and what kind of job are they doing when it comes to checking on leaking wells and surface casing vents and all this sort of stuff. So let's look at their most recent field surveillance and operations report from 2010. And so here are their well operations auditing results. I found these studied. All right. So in 2009, their staff checked on the surface casing, vent flow, and gas migration on 5 fracking wells in this province. We've got nearly 350,000 wells, and they only checked 5. And their excuse was limited compliance auditing was conducted in 2009 as staff focused on regulatory development so that they can frack you more without protecting you at all. Air pollution and carbon bombs. Here's the Barnett Shale. This is what that's what it started out with in 1997. Then you see the explosion in 2009. Look at the well density there. That's incredible. By the way, this triggered earthquakes in Dallas that have been investigated and have been directly related to the injection of fluids for the disposal of produced water in this formation. So what is that field producing in terms of CO2? 33,000 tons of CO2 a year, coming from the compressor stations and the horsepower mechanical cities and from leaks from the formation and everything else. That's a rough estimate, and that's coming from the EPA. So developing the Barnett Shale was like putting up 2 coal-fired power plants in the region. Dish, Texas, was part of this formation. They found with 1 compressor, they found levels of benzene, 1,000 parts per billion. And as the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality said, well, if you're next door to that, a lot of people are, that would be equivalent to opening up a can of gasoline and holding it up under your nose. Here's a frac operation. You can actually see the methane, fugitive methane emissions coming from the operation. The fugitive methane emissions from these operations are extreme. They have not been properly documented and recorded. And it's a huge, huge issue because methane is 25 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse warming gas. We know, this is from Dave Hughes, and a report he did on fracking, that if you look at tight sand, Barnett Shale, you see their CO2 production is 2 to 3 times greater than that of fugitive emissions, or 2 to 3 times that greater than conventional oil and gas operations. In other words, developing a shale gas field or a tight oil field could be dirtier in terms of CO2 emissions and methane leaks than building coal-fired plants.